Welcome everybody to Apocrypha Apocalypse. I'm Gary Machuda. We got the whole team today, William and David, and with special guest Orthodox Philip. William, how you doing?
A whole lot better after returning from a ton of flight delays in California. Doing way better. Glad to be back home in Texas. Glad to be here with the team. I tell you that. Thrilled to be with you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. David, how are things in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, the weather is terrible, but otherwise everything fine here. I was looking forward to the show.
Oh, good. Yeah, I am too. I'm thrilled and pumped, especially since we got our guest, Orthodox Philip. Orthodox Philip, welcome aboard. How are you?
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, doing great. Everything's good. Very, very blessed. No complaints. Very happy to be here talking about Septuagint stuff with other Bible nerds. So, good day for me.
Yeah, you came to the right place. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So today we're going to take a look at Michael Barber. He has a short video on the Septuagint, which I think would be a good intro in case people are familiar with it.
Great intro to get into it, yeah.
And then I want to talk a little bit with Orthodox Philip, because he put out a video on the Septuagint that I thought was really good about the development. And did the Septuagint start with the Torah?
Yeah.
And so we want to dive into that as well. So before we begin, though, guys, please do us a favor, smash the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the bell. You never know when we'll be on the air. And I think we're good. Guys, any opening statements you want to make?
I just want to say, go and check out the channel of Orthodox Philip. It's truly amazing. I think unique and very underrated. I was very pleased about his video with respect to Codex Claromontanus and the Book of Esdras, because he did a really good job, breaking down what Esdras is meant to represent in Codex Claromontanus, with it's the Greek Esdras, which you find in the large codices as Esdras A, or whether it's the combined book of Ezra and Nehemiah. He did a really, really good job. Awesome. I would not have that patience, to be honest, to run down the number of stitches and whether it's more in line with one or the other. So truly amazing work. So I have to commend for that, really. And for the latest video as well. So if you're a Bible nerd, certainly go and subscribe.
Thank you, David. Awesome. I appreciate the words a lot. It means a lot.
I love that. And I do want to tell people. Sorry, Gary. Go ahead, brother.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say I have the link to Orthodox Philip in the description. So if you guys,
I was about to do that. I was about to say, so people, we are on two channels right now. We're in the Apocrypha Apocalypse, and if you're watching over there on my channel on Patristic Pillars, if any of our moderators and Patristic Pillars, if you can share the link to Orthodox Philip's channel over there as well, please do so. I know we've got moderators in both channels. On my channel, please do so as well. If you all have not yet subbed to his channel, do that and do all the good things. What do? You put the bell notification and everything. Make sure you all do that. And if by some crazy chance you have not subscribed to the Apocrypha Apocalypse and you're watching right here with me on Patristic Pillars, well, you got to do that too. Because we're a team here together. And by the grace of the Lord, we'll be doing a whole lot more content together more often.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. So let's see here. Let's see if I can make this bigger. All right. So here's the video. Guys in the chat room, give me a 1 if you can hear it, 2 if you can't. Hopefully it's loud enough. All right.
Okay.
Actually, this is what he's talking about. It is a TikTok thing. It says the Greek Septuagint, which Jesus and Paul used, contained Catholic books that the Reformers removed.
By the way, are you familiar with the scholar? Anyone?
Yeah, actually, Michael Barber has written a few books, and I used to have him on my show, Hands on Apologetics.
Oh, really?
I had him a couple of times. He's a good guy.
Yeah,
good guy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't know him, but I have. I've watched his stuff, and I know who he is.
Yep. All right, so this is what he's critiquing, just to give you FYI. So.
Okay, one thing, and I think this should be a uniting point for ecumenical purposes. We should all agree that this is a great song and that the White Stripes are really incredible. But more important than that, the text that's here says something that I hear people who are Catholic Catholic apologists often say, and it's just wrong. It's claimed that the Greek Septuagint is what Jesus and Paul used, and that the Greek Septuagint contains the books that are found in Catholic Bibles that are not found in Protestant Bibles. And so therefore, this is proof that the Catholic Bible is correct. Hi, I'm Michael Barber. I'm professor of biblical studies and theology.
So he's going to expand a little bit on that. Let's just go through the commercial here. So what exactly do you mean by that, right? Because obviously everybody admits that the predominant quotations from the Old Testament in the New comes from Septuagint, not from the Masoretic.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think anybody would argue against that.
Right.
That's the massive majority. And if they do argue against that, I don't know what to say. Definitely in scholarship, you're not going to find anybody taking that even remotely serious if you argue against that.
Right. And I don't think he's going to. So let's continue.
The Septuagint and the development of the Bible. So the Septuagint is a term that's used to describe the Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures. Septuagint literally means 70. And the name is derived from a Jewish tradition about how this Greek translation came about. And eventually it came to be used to describe all the biblical books that were translated into Greek. But originally it was simply a description of, it seems, the Torah, the first witness of this tradition about 70 people translating the scriptures is found in the letter of Aristeas, which is a work that dates to the 3rd and the 2nd century BC. And here we're told about how 72 Jewish scribes translated the Hebrew scriptures into Greek. It's remarkable that nowhere in this work is the book of Genesis ever mentioned. There's no evidence that Genesis is in view. In fact, scholar Timothy Lim suggests that maybe this important book wasn't included in the Greek scriptures at this point. Either way.
Any comments? I know Orthodox Philip's going to dive deep into.
He really wants to jump into that, and I would love to hear what he has to say about that.
Well, just one comment on this: that this idea that the Septuagint never included, or the original Septuagint didn't include Genesis, is very strange. I haven't heard anyone say that anywhere. It's not in the patristic sources. It's not in the scholarship that I've read. So he found one scholar apparently who has this view, but it's very, very strange. Almost everybody says that in the modern scholars, they say that only the Pentateuch was translated. The early Christians are going to say the prophets or the Old Testament in general was translated. But I don't know anyone who says that, only Deuteronomy or 4 out of the 5 books were translated. It's very strange. I was surprised by that. The other things, not so much, but that surprised me. I found that very interesting.
Yeah. David, any thoughts?
Yeah, I just don't know what's the, driving motivation behind this, or what's the actual, evidence that the Genesis would be excluded, and why particularly Genesis. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, by the way, speaking of Genesis in particular, I don't think it really mentions any of those books. Like, it just says the law was translated. So why is Genesis getting picked on? Like, it doesn't talk about Deuteronomy. It doesn't talk about Leviticus. I don't think it quotes from any of the 5 books. So very strange. Very strange comment.
I thought that was strange too. And just another point to make is that, I think it's important, is that if you do look at the ancient LXX manuscripts, Septuagint manuscripts, they all the ancient ones include Genesis. So that's another thing to consider. You think of the major ones, whether it be Sinaiticus, Vaticanus, Alexandrinus, and you can, whatever you want to date them in whatever order, these early Greek Bibles, Septuagints, they don't lack Genesis. So that, I think that is an important point to put forth.
Yeah, and I think even the Greek style is consistent in all 5 of those books. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I don't understand that particular point. I don't understand why he got that. And you mentioned, I was not able to find it. I did look a little bit as I was on a flight. I tried to find multiple scholars. Unfortunately, this is not a view that I would say is predominant in scholarship. What do you all think?
Yeah, not at all.
No. No, Timothy Lim's pretty. I have his book. In fact, I'm searching it right now just to see if I could find this section. He's pretty critical, and he's not afraid to make some statements that are really out of the norm.
But outside of him, Gary, are you aware of anyone else? Right,
No, not-
right, yeah.
Nope, not offhand. Okay, so let's see. Let's continue.
We should not imagine that the Septuagint is some sort of published book that you could go down to your local Barnes and Nobles and pick up, and have as your own devotional copy. The first use of this term, Septuagint, really it's meant to describe these books of Moses, and then later other books got translated, and they also become kind of called Septuagint. But we shouldn't imagine that there was some kind of Septuagint that Paul had. He was walking around with it, had all the biblical books in it that Catholics have in one volume.
Okay. True.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, in case people don't know that, first century and before, the scriptures were on scrolls. So a collection of translations, whether it's the Hebrew or the Greek, would be a bookshelf full of scrolls, basically, or a scroll shelf, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, and they weren't walking around with that, I tell you that.
Yeah.
we know that they weren't walking around with that.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I would.
Go ahead.
Go. Sorry, Gary.
I was just going to say, Codices was adopted by Christians, really. So, not Jews. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think, I don't know if it's a pushback per se, but just to be clear about what we mean when we say that the apostles quoted from the Septuagint, we don't mean that they're walking around holding bags of scrolls or something,
Sure.
But the copies that they were reading and using were copies from the Alexandrian version of the Bible, which would have included all those scrolls in a library. So maybe they didn't have all those scrolls on hand at every given moment, but their copies certainly were copied from that version. So I think that just explaining that perspective a little bit more clearly can be helpful for some people.
Right. Yeah. And so really the Septuagint's no different than the Hebrew text in that regard. They're both sets of scrolls.
Good point.
So if you say the New Testament opts for the Hebrew or the Masoretic text or Proto-Masoretic text, you're dealing basically with the same phenomenon. They didn't have a Tanakh, a pocket version Tanakh either.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Good point. Really good point.
David, any thoughts?
Yeah, and perhaps, again, it's really a problem of definitions and what we mean by a Septuagint. Now, I certainly agree that there was no bound book, called the Septuagint, and the apostles, carrying it with them. That's certainly not the case. If we say Septuagint is simply just a collection of, translated scriptures into Greek, well, such collection certainly existed. Now, of course, it's a different thing to identify what we mean by the collection, what books were in that collection. But that would be true for the proto-canon as well. I mean, how do you know whether, I don't know, Esther was in the Septuagint, right? So, or whether it was Ecclesiastes or Song of Songs. Now, if we mean by which Greek translation, whether it was the so-called Old Greek, which is just a subset of translations, because then you have the Kyge recension, which comes after that. Then certainly the Old Greek, which is mostly designated as the Septuagint, is certainly the Old Greek is certainly older. So mostly, to the best of my knowledge, for example, the Septuagintal version of Daniel is reckoned an older translation than the Theodosian Daniel. So you have these things like what we mean by a Septuagint. It's really the critical thing is to define what we mean by that, because the definition really, gives you the boundaries, and tells you what we are now talking about, what we are discussing right now.
Yeah, that's nailing it on the head, David. Is the definition? I feel like there's an equivocation thing that happens, like a sleight of hand that happens. Septuagint can mean one of two things, and you can see them sort of moving the definition around when it's convenient. The first definition is the original translation made by the very first committee of translators. Whatever they translated, that was the Septuagint, but the fathers refer to the translation of the 70 as simply being the Bible that was in Alexandria. And so that's sometimes also referred to as the Septuagint. And what they'll do is they'll take the first references and they'll apply it to the first definition. They'll say, oh, it doesn't exist because it didn't include all those books. But if you're going by the second definition that of the Alexandrian Bible, the whole corpus of Greek translations, well, that certainly did exist. And that's really what the fathers are relying on and using for their Bible. It just gets into this semantics thing. And I think it's, I don't think it's intentionally dishonest, but I think that it muddies the waters to the point where, it turns into an apologetic weapon. But I think just being clear that when we say Septuagint, we don't necessarily mean the original translation. We mean that rolling corpus of books that was in Alexandria that the early Jews and Christians would have referred to as the translation of the 70. So just having everything defined, I think, is pretty important.
Yeah, my favorite definition is basically relying on Origen's Hexapla, where he just compared all these different translations, and the fifth column was the Septuagint. That's what the church fathers knew as the Septuagint. Sure. So if we go by the early church and with Origen's Hexapla, then we can pretty well define what the Septuagint is. Although, of course, unfortunately, we don't have the Hexapla, so we don't know from Origen precisely what would that fifth column look like, but that would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think we have a good idea from the Syro Hexapla, what was in there, at least content-wise. We know what's in there. And by the way, the Deuterocanon is in the Syro Hexapla, so we can be sure that it was in the Hexapla column.
Yeah. Very good.
Good point.
Let's continue.
Great points.
William, do you have anything else you want to add?
Oh, no, nothing to add to that. Great points, though. And this is great. This is really, really fun. Go ahead, brothers.
Excellent.
And Tobit and Sirach, just because later on it was included here. So to say, well, Paul used the Septuagint, and so therefore we know that these books are part of the Bible, is misleading. I'm Catholic. I love Sirach. I love Tobit. I recognize them. I affirm them as canonical biblical books, but it's way more complicated than the way some Catholic apologists are making it out to be. In fact, the Septuagint would later include things that Catholics don't recognize as part of the biblical text, like Psalm 151. So we want to be careful here about overstating the value of the Septuagint and making it seem like the Septuagint was some kind of closed collection of books that Paul would have known about, when really originally Septuagint probably just referred to a select group of books and then came to expand to mean more. Now,
okay, I think that's about it. So what do you guys think? The Septuagint we shouldn't think of it as a closed book, but a kind of rolling collection of books.
Yeah, I would add to that it's stabilized around the early Christian era. So it's not like it was totally loose and free for all. I think books were being added according to the Jewish understanding of what they believed was canonical. So they weren't just adding books willy-nilly forever. As books were being written and recognized as canonical, those were being added to this corpus. So if you think 3rd century BC, was every single book of the Deuterocanon written? Probably not. There probably were being written around the same time. And as those were written and as they were translated, I think they were added to that corpus. But in a pious way, right? They're saying these are scriptures, so we're going to add this to our corpus of scriptures.
Yeah, they're already recognized as such. Great point.
Yeah, even if we like he said, it's somehow expanded later on. The question is, okay, and how much it expanded, and when did this expansion ended, right? Or when was it recognized as being something complete, right? So even if, let's say that, okay, the Torah was translated first and then the upcoming books, but we're not talking about now the original, or what he means by original, that it was first the Torah. We're talking about the 1st century AD, and by that time, if it was expanded, and we certainly know that at least some deuterocanonical writings were included, for sure. So I would say generally it is recognized. that the Septuagintal version, I mean the Old Greek version of Jeremiah, which is completely different than the Masoretic Jeremiah, did incorporate Baruch. And it was not and Baruch was not distinguished by any means. It was an integral part of Jeremiah. It was known as Jeremiah. Nobody called it Baruch up till Origen. Origen was the first to differentiate Baruch from Jeremiah. One of the leading scholars, Pierre Maurice Bogeat, argued that Baruch certainly was part of this Old Greek Jeremiah, and presumably the latter as well. And then we have Daniel and Esther. These certainly also included the additional stories like Susanna, Prayer of the Three Youth, and so on, and the expanded version of Esther. So even if let's say we go with the most skeptical way, that okay, whether Sirach or Tobit were part of it, we certainly know that at least these expanded versions of Jeremiah, Daniel, and Esther were larger than the Masoretic text. So in this way, we can say, well, the Deuterocanon was there at least partly, right? Regarding these other books, I'm not sure whether like 4th Maccabees or 3rd Maccabees were there. That's another question. But, for example, Ecclesiastes or Song of Songs are generally recognized as being translated very late, like around the 1st century AD, and Ezra and Nehemiah 2nd century AD. So, okay, if someone's going to say the Deuterocanon wasn't there because, the Deuterocanon was just being penned, let's say, in the 2nd century, well, but some of these proto-canonical books don't bear that Greek style or that pattern that is similar to these writings that were translated in the 2nd, 3rd century BC, but rather they have a pattern that fits into the 1st, 2nd century AD. So, it's a complicated issue.
Yeah. And I think you can also refer some things from the New Testament, right? Because the New Testament, like I said, its preferred text is the Septuagint text.
Yep.
And there are allusions and very clear indications of using the Deuterocanon, and I think that would align with the Septuagint text. So I think you could draw an inference that they would be there in the Septuagint. Otherwise, where did they get them? What other collection could they have been? It wasn't. They don't align with like the Aramaic Tobit and Dead Sea Scrolls or something like that. It's obvious it's a Septuagintal translation. So I think you can limit it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I agree. Just to add to that very briefly, there you can tell very clearly in the New Testament that there are not only allusions to the deuterocanonical books, but flat out direct references. And look, Hebrews 11:35 is incredibly powerful. It's virtually impossible getting around that. That clearly is depending on the 2nd Maccabees. And look, you look at St. Matthew, the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 27. The fact that it is relying upon wisdom, but not only wisdom too, the suffering servant of wisdom too, but the way it masterfully combines Isaiah's suffering servant and the suffering servant of wisdom shows a reliance on the Septuagintal texts in the Gospel of St. Matthew. That to me is big because it is relying on Septuagintal texts. So you're going to have a hard time arguing against the Deuterocanon being present there. I don't think it is a good argument trying to argue against that, it being present in the Septuagint. I mean, look at Hebrews 1:3 as well. That's an incredibly rare Greek word there for the radiance of God, apaugasma. In fact, if I'm correct, it only appears in Hebrews 7:25. Isn't that right, Gary?
That's correct.
Hebrews 7:25-26. That's the only other place it appears. So very clearly, the author of the letter to the Hebrews, when he says that he is the radiance of the glory of God, you have a direct parallel there, a direct dependence on Wisdom 7. That's pretty big.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, there are some that are very faint, so we can't
Sure.
say with certainty. Like Judith, I think, is faint.
You think the
What,
Judith Mary parallel is faint, or you think that one's pretty good?
I think it's there, but it's for me, I always prefer something really substantial. So
Okay.
with friends, I would say, yeah, it's there. If I was
Gotcha.
going to
Got
go into
it.
debate, well, I probably wouldn't.
You'd refrain from it. Okay.
Yeah.
One really good example from the early church is Irenaeus. So, and is against heresies. So he does three things in one book. For one, he tells the story of the Septuagint. So he's supporting it and using it. One, he quotes a variant from the Septuagint in the Psalms. So he has before him the same text that we have, or a very similar one. And then thirdly, he quotes from wisdom as scripture. So you have in one father, in the second, third century, who's using the Septuagint. It's like our Septuagint, quoting the Deuterocanon. So what's the implication is that for his understanding of the Septuagint includes wisdom, right? That would be the implication. So, and it's not just him. There are other fathers who are referencing these deuterocanonical books, but he just sort of nails it, and scholars note this. Actually, I wanted to read one sentence from Henry Sweet, who's one of my favorite scholars.
Great one.
Yeah, he's really good. He says something very interesting. I think you guys will like it. He says the old Latin canon truly represents the collection of Greek sacred books which came into the hands of the early Christian communities at Antioch, Alexandria, and Rome. So the context here is St. Augustine's canon list, and it's really interesting that he believes, based off of the early church fathers, the manuscript witnesses, he believes that Latin canon, the North African canon, reflects the Septuagint corpus as it was received by the early Christians. So I think it's a really interesting perspective, but it kind of calls out this apologetic attempt to discredit the Septuagint by saying, oh, well, the original Septuagint was only the Torah or whatever. Well, the point is by the time of Christ, you had a larger corpus, which included the Deuterocanon, and that was the version that was being referenced by the New Testament authors. So I think at the end of the day, it's like they set up some arbitrary requirements, like, no, in order for it to count, it has to be only the original, or it has to be translated by only one committee. It's like, where are you getting all of these requirements? That the fact is that by that time, the work had been done, whether it was by one committee or two or three or 10 years or 100 years. It doesn't matter what it took to produce it. The fact is that it was there, and it did include those deuterocanonicals. So that's just some of my thoughts on that.
Yeah. To kind of veer off a little bit, and then we'll go back to the Deuterocanon question, but just to make the comment so we can have it on the air, I forgot to make it earlier, to kind of hop back to where we were at Genesis. And one point I think would be important to make, and I haven't cataloged every reference. I know there are several, though. But one good thing to keep in mind would be that in the New Testament, yet again, as Gary pointed out, the New Testament is so important to us. In the New Testament, there are multiple areas where Greek Genesis, Septuagint Genesis, is directly quoted. So that is another powerful witness that Genesis was there, present in the Septuagint, was extant in Greek. It's directly quoted upon in the New Testament multiple times over.
That's
direct
right.
citations. Go ahead, guys.
Does anybody what the date of the letter of Aristeas is?
Ooh.
Second
Exactly.
century BC is what they usually, somewhere in there.
Okay, that early. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, scholars are they're pretty confident in that. I didn't find any pushback at all against that. So
that would be the general consensus then.
Yeah, around the second, as far as the late 3rd century, I've heard some say. So pretty close to that time of Ptolemy.
Yeah.
Yes, very good. Hey, why don't we knock down a couple of super chats?
Let's do that. And thank you to the audience. Thank you all for sending your support in. You guys rock.
William, I'm going to bring it up. Can you do the announcement?
Yeah, let's do it. AB, thank you, brother.
Voice.
I love it, man. AB sent a super chat over there at the Apocrypha Apocalypse and here on Patristic Pillars. Thank you for your support, brother. He says, God bless you, brothers, and much love, AB, brother. Thank you so much. And to all of you all, we are able to do what we're doing because of your support. We greatly appreciate it. The incredible brother Daniel says, is Logos recommended? Yes. Can someone guide me through this? Yes, brother, hit me up. If you want, I can. Tonight I've got time. Hit me up and I can guide you over the phone if you want, or we'll connect via Zoom and I'll show you. I'll guide you. Now here, I don't know what Gary's going to say. I can tell you what I think. What is the best Septuagint? Most authentic? Well, you're going to find that when you're doing critical research, you're going to find that the Göttingen is the I like to call it the Rolls Royce of Septuagints. It is phenomenal. That is what we utilize. I know Orthodox Philip's laughing at the terminology I use, but I love that one. Of course, there are other ones that are more accessible, but the Göttingen is just beyond phenomenal. What if you wouldn't get your hands on the Göttingen, Gary? I know you do have it. What other one would you recommend, or which other ones do you recommend?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I like Sweets. I mean, if you're dealing just with the Greek, that's very good. I think Lexham has one.
Yeah, Lexham's good. I've got it right here. I have the Lexham one.
But to the Göttingen, I mean, the Göttingen one is fantastic for variants. You know, seeing all the different variants and stuff. So
yeah, if you want to. Because I know Daniel is learning Greek and he's a very quick learner. That's a great one that I recommend. You're looking for an English one. Lexham, in my opinion, is great and it's quite affordable. It's a really good one.
Lexham.
There you go, man. I was trying to grab mine. I got it right down here.
Yeah.
That's a good one, isn't it, Orthodox?
Yeah.
So we think alike. I love that one.
Yeah,
I
like
carry that one with me very often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you're talking hardcover, there's also the Stuttgart by the United Bible Society. That's good too.
Sure.
Yeah, and the only other one, because I didn't hear it come up, is the Ralph's Handhart, which is they call it semi-critical because it's based off of a smaller set of manuscripts than the Göttingen one, but it still is considered critical. It has an
still worthy of owning. Worthy of owning,
yeah. I use it because I like physical books, so it's
and you're gonna have to I don't know. Have a lot of money if you want to own the Göttingen physical, all of them. That'll probably end up costing more than a home owning all of them.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, for sure.
Do you have the Göttingen? Do you have the digital edition?
I don't. Yeah, I don't have it. I know of it. I have the Nets translation, which sometimes translates from the Göttingen. So if I need to, but most of the time the variants are so small between those, it doesn't really affect my work too much.
Gotcha.
But, it's on my to-do list someday to get access to it. I know it's on Logos. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dr. David, do you have a preferred text?
I don't think so. I heard also about Brenton, like Septuagint, but I never compared all these different ones, so I cannot really tell. So.
Yeah, Tony said that I have a video on the Septuagints. That's true. If you want to see my comments on some of the different Septuagint translations, I have a video giving my 2 cents on each one.
There you go.
There you go.
Random Catholic, brother, thank you for your support. He says, Bible nerds need money. We do, man. We do need money. Random Catholic, thank you for your support. And we've got Rosarium loves David, man. I got to tell you, you got a fan there, man. Dr. MD PhD David Zavaris, man. Rosarium, man. I got to tell you, St. Francis Baby Toe. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
He just gave me two other diplomas because just too many.
Let me say this before we even read his super chat. St. Francis Baby Toe, the brother had been hospitalized for quite some time. He was sick for quite some time with pneumonia. I'm so glad he is back home today. I don't know if he's home already, but I know he's going to be home today. Brother, the Lord bless you. I hope you are doing way better. And the fact that you're here in the chat means that you are doing a lot better. We're happy to have you here, brother. He says, what is the best LXX version in Greek to use? I currently use one called Septuaginta.
Yeah, that's the Stuttgart one.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah,
I have it around here somewhere.
Yeah, that's a solid one. But I guess kind of overlapping with the other things that we were talking about. The other ones are really good. But that is a good addition. Definitely a good addition. Rosarium. If, for example, an Ethiopian Orthodox Church would come back into full communion with Rome, would they be permitted to still use their broader canon, or would they have to adhere to the Roman canon? David, what are your thoughts on that? I'm going to throw the football at you. What are your thoughts?
Well, you know me, William. You know me.
I do.
Of course, we would have another council and we would add more books to our canon. Yeah. You hear the irony in my voice. So they would be permitted to use as far as they would just use it in a liturgical way. These are the books, but would not, you know, insist on using these other books as inspired scripture.
Right.
So if they wish to read them, no problem, or use it in any liturgical way. But of course, communion requires the same dogmas. These should be consistent throughout the whole Catholic Church, including those which come to communion with Rome. So certainly the canon should be the same. It's not an exception.
Yeah, that is why wherever you look, Rosarium, in Eastern Catholic churches, there is not a difference in canon. They are one and the same. So yeah, the canon of the Catholic Church would remain the same. We're not going to be adding any new books into the canon. That is fixed. That is closed. But as David laid out there, would they be able to use them in an ecclesiastical sense? Sure, in a manner of saying, okay, these are valuable. They can utilize them in that way, but not in the way of saying that these are on par and they are now canonical. That simply would not happen. And here's the other thing: an Ethiopian Orthodox canon. I'm not sure that there, kind of is an Ethiopian Orthodox canon. That's the other thing that really comes into question. They've got a lot of books in there. I like to joke and say they have everything tossed in there in the kitchen sink. But at the end of the day, depending on which Orthodox, Ethiopian Orthodox you speak to, one may tell you, no, we do have those other books there, but we don't view them on the same status as these others here. So it's really tough to know. I believe they even have Pseudo-Josephus tossed in there, don't they, Gary?
Yeah, Josephus or something like that. It's not even Josephus's name. It's
not even Josephus's name. So that's and I've spoken to a few Ethiopians, and they've told me, sure, it's valuable to read. We don't view it on par with the other books. So then, what is the Ethiopian Orthodox canon? That is the mysterious pink elephant that we've been trying to find. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, and by the way, there always were some partial communions that happen. So we do have Eastern Catholics that actually are Ethiopians, and they have their own liturgy, and yet they of course have the same canon as the Latin Rite has. So that would be just an example of that really there would be no difference among these churches. By the way, regarding the Ethiopian canon, there's an Ethiopian canon law. It's called the Fethanegest. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And allegedly, this has the same biblical canon as the Orthodox Study Bible, not a bigger one. In other words, this Ethiopian canon law excludes books like Enoch or Jubilees, which is interesting because now it's even more complicating the whole picture of the Ethiopian canon, whether truly these books above or more than the Eastern Orthodox canon, whether these are regarded on the same level as for example, the rest of the Bible, So it's interesting. I'm gonna throw the name of this canon law in the chat because I really don't know how should I pronounce it, so I don't really want to butcher it. So you can check it out.
Great point there. It's great.
Yeah, interesting. I gotta scroll down to get it so I can. There we go. Yeah, I have no idea.
Is that available online? I got to look into that.
Yeah, I just saw it somewhere, but I also need to fact check. But that's what I read. So it should exclude like books like Enoch, Jubilees, and others.
Very good.
Interesting. Daniel, the brother Daniel. Daniel, thank you for your support, brother. Daniel, you rock, brother. He says, did the Septuagint, and Daniel, hit me up if you want to connect later or maybe some other time this weekend, and I'll help you. I'll show you how to use that. Did the Septuagint lose 20% of its original meaning from Hebrew verite? I know you covered this, Gary, in Jerome, but would love some thoughts on it. What are your thoughts, Gary?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what he's asking, though. Did the Septuagint lose 20% of its original meaning from Hebrew Verite. Well, it kind of overrides the Septuagint, right? Because Hebrew Verite just sticks to the Hebrew. So I'm not sure how that fits in.
Yeah, I think what he means, and I could be wrong. Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong. I think he means, did the Septuagint, when it was translated from the original Hebrew, did it lose 20% of its meaning? I think that is what he means. Orthodox Philip, right? It seems to me that's what.
Yeah, that's how I interpreted it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why
I believe that.
20%? I don't.
Well, my
Did you say that in a video? Or go ahead, Orthodox Philip, go for it.
No, my thought on this, what I thought of it is, if you think about the number of words in Hebrew versus the number of words in Greek, it's a massive difference. Greek has so many more words, and there are many, many cases where the Septuagint translators are looking at one Hebrew word and are interpreting it with different Greek words. You can think of like the word for like worship or something. They're going to translate in different ways. Like they have two words. I can't remember how many words now, but they have like 3 or 4 different words for worship, where English has like 2 and Hebrew has 1.
Sure.
So they're going to actually interpret the Hebrew for us, and they're a pre-Christian Jewish translator. So I would say the opposite, actually. I think the Septuagint adds meaning to the Old Testament because it helps interpret it. It helps draw out meaning from the Hebrew, which might not be obvious at first glance, especially to modern Protestant translators, like most of our translations are from. So I think the Septuagint is very valuable in interpreting the Hebrew text because it gives us our oldest interpretation on it.
Yeah, every translation is a commentary.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the other beautiful thing, that was really well said. I mean, it basically gives you an insight into how the Hebrew was understood in that. Remember, the Hebrew is a consonantal text at this point. There's no pointing, so the Septuagint could help us out also in that oral tradition of pointing, what the vowels were and what was the meaning behind it. So
right.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful.
Really, really well laid out. That was a very, very good point there.
Okay. Gary 2.0. I don't think this is a super chat, but hey, thanks, Gary 2.0.
Yeah, I think what members get, I don't know how it works. I think members get a monthly highlighted chat. I think that's what he used there. Gary, thank you for the support, brother. Lord bless you. Hollywood Big Boss, brother, how you doing today? Brenton Septuagint English column tries to match the KJV in places where it doesn't. NETS is very difficult to read. Transliteration opposed to translating. I like the NETs. I dig it though. I like it, but I guess to each his own. What are your thoughts, you gentlemen's thoughts on that?
Orthodox Philip, any ideas?
Yeah, I have all of them, so I kind of use them for different purposes.
And they have their own purpose, right? Each one.
Yeah, NETS is great if you need something literal. If you're trying to get transparency into that Greek, you can have the Greek and NETS side by side for super close up visibility into the text. But if you just want to read it for reading's sake, you might want to grab Lexham or the Orthodox Study Bible or something like this for reading or devotional purposes. But I would say each has a purpose that you use it for, and an audience too. If I'm talking to a scholarly audience, I'm going to probably use NETS or Lexham. If I'm talking to an Orthodox audience, I'll use the Orthodox Study Bible, just depending on who's listening or who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
David, William, any?
I completely agree. Yeah, very good point there. David, go for it, brother.
No, I don't think I have anything to add to that. So,
Okay. Well, that's it for the super chats. Let's go to some comments. And did you guys see Frank Turret said that Catholics added books again, and his most recent Q&A didn't learn, I guess. Were you guys familiar with that, Turk?
I had no idea. I didn't know he did another one. I don't know. Does he have a channel? I guess he has a channel where he does
cross-examine.
Okay, that's his channel. I got you, and he's still at it then. All right.
Yeah, terrible stuff. I don't know when, as I said previously.
I love that answer. Terrible stuff.
As I said previously, when did the Eastern and the Oriental Orthodox add the books? I don't know. Can you help me out, Orthodox Philip? Because I don't know what these these other churches have with the Council of Trent. I think nothing.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, nothing at all, right? It was centuries after this schism. They were just there the whole time, I guess.
Yeah.
I noticed that some mainstream Catholic scholars like Bergsma and Thomas seem to have different views than this channel on the canon development. Yes.
Do they?
That's they probably do.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Okay.
You know, the thing is, especially with biblical studies,
We've had
biblical
Bergsma on.
scholarship, it's very specialized, right?
Sure.
And some are in the wheelhouse and some aren't. And just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you know everything in every field. And so, yeah, you're going to have difference of opinion and so on. So, yeah that's.
You heard that, Dr. David. Just because you have a doctorate, you don't know everything.
Yeah, I told this once. I mean, you might be even smarter than me, even in medical stuff, because I cannot, grasp or the whole field of medicine. So, if you come here with cardiology, you might be better than me. I mean, that might be true. Yeah, and then you have many things online. You can, look it up. You have specialized websites, professional websites. So really, as a layman, theoretically, you might be even more educated as some of those guys who are really like just specialized in tiny little things, but they're missing the whole picture sometimes.
Yeah. Jesus Talks with Ari, by the way, a friend of the channel. So hit the likes over there. Watching, meanwhile, waiting to be seen in ER. Hope you're doing well. It's nice to see Orthodox Philip here. What a legend. Yeah, absolutely. We're thrilled and pumped to have him. And
we hope you feel better, Ari. We hope you get better.
Yes.
And you're probably not being seen because your doctor is live streaming on Apocrypha Apocalypse.
Yeah, you got your doctor busy live streaming, man.
Just going through here real quick. I didn't read this, but Matthew Thomas and ISB. Judging by a later manuscript tradition and citations from early Christian sources, Septuagint collection appears to have so typically included books of Tobit, etc. Yeah,
that's right.
That's something we didn't really talk about is the great codices. Are the great codices exemplars of the Septuagint?
I would say yes.
Yes, they are. There's some questions. It's just, again, coming from Sweet talking about this. There's some questions what books the scribes had available to them when they were making these codices. Did they have all the books in front of them, or did they maybe not know if all of these were canonical or not? Because there is slight variations in the sets of books between those great uncials.
Sure.
So they're not exactly, but they're pretty close. If you look at them on a table and you fill in the ones that we believe were there that are missing, like Codex Sinaiticus is missing books that we know were canonical. But if you ignore those ones and you kind of look at some of the disputed books, even then they're pretty close. I think 2 out of the 3 contain Second Maccabees, for example, so that's pretty solid. Yeah. And then I think the 2 books of wisdom are in all of them. Sirach and Wisdom of Solomon are in all of them. So just if you look at a table, you'll see they're more or less the same books. There's a few that may or may not have fallen out because I don't think for sure Vaticanus and Sinaiticus are not complete. There may have been pieces that were lost. So we can't say anything for certain, but it looks like, more or less they're, aiming at the same corpus of books.
Yeah. So again, I think it depends what we mean by the Septuagint again, because if we mean by strictly speaking one collection or one style of translation, then certainly there are some differences. So, for example, Daniel is constantly found in the Theodosian version or Kaige Theodosian version, because we know that the Septuagint of Daniel went out from use in the church. So, as I said, the older translation, the old Greek translation of Daniel, simply wasn't popular, and the Kaige Theodosian was more mainstream. So that's what. But again, when we look at the fifth column in Origen's Hexapla, you find there the original Septuagint or Old Greek version of Daniel, which wasn't in use in the church. So I think canon-wise, it's pretty close, as I can agree, certainly. I'm not sure. I think there are some more books even about the Septuagint, but when we go by translation style or version, I would say it's a blended mixture of Kaige, Old Greek, perhaps other. We don't know for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. By
Sorry.
the way,
That's
oh yeah,
cracked
go ahead,
up.
read this. Yeah, this is funny.
What was that, brother?
Well, I was going to say something interesting that you'll hear some scholars talking about is they'll flip around the narrative. They'll say that the canon doesn't come from the Septuagint contents. The Septuagint contents come from the canon, which I think helps the Deuterocanon's case, because it means that the reason why those books were included in the Hexapla were because they were considered canonical by the church. So I would tend to agree with scholars on that point. So again, with these uncials, these codices, maybe reflects the personal opinions of the scribe, what he believed was canonical, which may have been, slight percentage different from another scribe in another place. But yeah, I think that kind of helps understand why there are some variants sometimes. Is the Septuagint is really reflecting what the church in general recognizes as canonical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
St. Francis Babytoe, brother, thank you for the support. God bless you, my friend. Thoughts on When God Spoke Greek? He's talking about the book, When God Spoke Greek. It's a good book. It deals with the Septuagint quite a lot. I like it. It's been a few years since I have read it. So off the top of my head, I don't remember everything, but I know it deals a lot with textual diversity and what have you. And yeah, the preference over the Septuagint. I forget the name of the author.
Is it De Silva?
No.
No, it
it's
wasn't
not
De Silva?
No,
Okay.
but positive it's not De Silva. Well, let me see. But I'm positive it's not De Silva. It is Dr. Law, Dr. Timothy Michael Law.
Yep.
Good book. I'm sure you've read it, Gary. I'm sure
Yep.
you've read it. It's been out for a few
Yeah.
years. Good book, though. I do recommend that one. It is good. And we do have a few other super chats, Gary. I don't know if you want to bring up Ari. Ari has a really good one. And then
Let's see.
And then we got Bronca
Beat me
being a
to it.
hater. Bronca's a hater over there in the Apocrypha Apocalypse. He prefers that channel. Bronca, Ari, didn't we have Bronca on the short list to become a moderator? Now we're going to have to put him. He's now in line 580, man. What a hater Bronca is, man. All right, I'm joking, guys. Oh, this is a good one. Why don't all apostolic churches agree on the same Old Testament canon? Protestant Ari is poking the bear. Now, in terms of, I'll say this, there are many Eastern Orthodox that do agree with the longer canon, with the way the Catholics view the canon. There are even Syriacs. I mean, we had was he Coptic, Gary? Coptic deacon?
Yeah.
A few years
So
back.
Yeah.
He agreed, in essence, with the North African Code. But then there are some that have differences where they have a very different New Testament canon. And I think even Orthodox Philip here on the panel can say that 22 books, that's a bit, cutting out those other books are valuable in their scripture. What are your thoughts on that, Orthodox Philip? What would you say to that?
Yeah, the Orthodox Church is a lot more stable and consistent than I think most people realize. There's been a lot of attempts to muddy the waters, and I don't know if it's coming from internal or external influences, but it could be just ignorance. People they look at different lists from the fathers and they say, oh, I guess the Orthodox Church has no set canon. That could be one reason. Others could be Protestant influence, which we know was happening in Russia. That's very well documented.
It's a good point.
Through the Russian Bible Society actually was trying to push the Deuterocanon out of Russian Bible translations. And so you can see that effect back in the 1800s. There was a movement within Russia to try to push the Deuterocanon in an appendix or out completely. But it was a phase. If you get a Russian Bible today, it includes the Deuterocanon. So it sort of corrected itself over time. But yeah, in general, the only difference would be like 3rd Maccabees, 4th Maccabees, 1st Esdras. Those are really the only 3 books in question when it comes to Catholic and
And
Orthodox.
do you hold those to be canonical?
I hold 1st Esdras. I'm still working on it. That one,
Okay.
it's pretty complex one. My position right now is it's the Septuagintal version of Ezra.
Okay.
But
We
I'm
agree.
not sure. Yeah.
No, yeah,
So-
we agree. What about 3rd and 4th Maccabees? I don't know what your position on those would be.
So my position, based off of our canon law, is that they're holy books, venerable books, but they're not considered canonical books.
Okay.
That's just what our canons say, right? If you look at the set of all the canons that are ratified at what we consider to be the 6th Ecumenical Council, what you would consider to be the Council of Trullo,
Sure.
it doesn't ever call 3rd Maccabees canonical or divine or inspired. Never uses that language. It just includes it in a set of books that it calls holy and venerable. So I think if you say, no, these are divinely inspired scriptures, you're not going to find that stated in our canon law. So there's sort of this, second category of books that we would respect. And then we have those that we would consider the closed canon. And really, in our ratified list, the only closed canon that we see is in that list from Carthage. So I would say that, whatever Carthage meant when it said its books, that's what we'd consider our closed canon. And we may disagree a little bit between Catholics and Orthodox on what they meant by Esdras 2 books. But, I think more or less it's the same canon.
Yeah, regarding Esdras, I see it as the same thing, like, and me, as the Septuagintal Daniel, and the later Gygae Theodosian Daniel.
Right.
So, I mean, Esdras was the first version of the first Greek translation of Ezra, so it precedes the Greek translation of Ezra, and so I just see it as a variant. I don't see a big issue there. If the church did have both Daniels, why couldn't it have both Ezras? It's just
right.
So for me, it's a variant. It's a non-issue. Different people were using different translation. That was the fact. I mean, even Jerome says, even in the East, some even read Aquila or Symmachus. So these were Jewish translations. And so, I mean, post-Christian Jewish translations, to be specific. So if those people did not have that issue with that, so I don't have an issue with Ezra. I'd be curious, what's your position on Psalm 151? Because I think Qumran somehow a little bit singles it out, like it's really about David. It's not, so it's kind of be something different. I also saw a snapshot by an Orthodox friend of mine who was on Mount Athos, and he sent me this snapshot of Psalm 151, and said, like, this is just David's own composition or something, private composition. So I'd be curious, what's the position on that?
Yeah, so when I look at, it's kind of hard to tell from lists, because if you look at the manuscripts which have Psalm 151, they don't really number it as Psalm 151. It'll say something like additional psalm or something else. They set it apart even within the manuscript. So even if you recognize it as canonical, it's not technically Psalm 151. It's just a variant of the Psalms. So that's kind of how I take it, is in the Septuagint's version of the Psalms, it includes that psalm, not as an additional psalm, but as an additional variant in that transmission line. That's kind of how I take it. So I would say, put it in my Bible, because I want to read the Septuagintal Psalms. For me personally, that's the text that I prefer to read. But if someone's reading from Masoretic Psalms and it's not in there, I would take that as a variant. I wouldn't take that as a book is missing from your Bible. Not like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have again the same position. Because I when we had this Coptic priest or deacon, he said, okay, we have Psalm 151 and Prayer of Manasseh, and I said, well, okay, I think that's just a variant of Chronicles and Psalms.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Read the
maybe-
text. If you, I don't remember which manuscript it is. Maybe it's Alexandrinus or whatever. Look at the header to Psalm 151. See if it numbers it as 151 or if it says something. I think it says something else.
Yeah, outside the number.
Outside the number. Yeah.
Outside the
And,
number, right?
and
yeah.
interesting enough, the old Latin has the same thing. It says it's outside the number.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we at least we know around the 2nd century that Psalm 151 was already distinguished.
That would be an answer to Professor Barber here, because he mentioned Psalm
Right.
151.
Right. Yeah, he did. He mentioned that. Yeah.
Hollywood Big Boss says Orthodox Study Bible in Lexington.
Cool.
Septuagint's my favorite.
I agree. Yeah, those are the two best.
Oh,
They're good. Lino. Oh, actually, you know what? This is a super chat. So, William, if you could do the thrilled and pumped voice.
oh, I love it, Lino. I love Lino Molina, brother. How you doing, Lino, brother? You working the lines today, brother? He says, thoughts on the new revised standard version of the Septuagint from Catholic Bible Press and HarperCollins. I think it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it. Of course, I would. The ones that we brought up earlier, I find them to be. You know what? Get them all, man. I mean, it helps to have all of them on hand. Really, it helps. And I use the NRS. I mean, early in the morning today, I was using the NRSV. I think it is good. It's worthy to use. Certain areas are quite sharp and quite solid over and above others. It's good. It's really good. What are you all's thoughts on the NRSV?
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so I can't really chime in on it.
Philip, have you seen it, brother?
I'm not familiar with NRSV Septuagint. I'm trying to Google it. I still don't see anything.
I think, as far as I know, I think that Lino Molina might mean. I don't think he means the Septuagint. I think he means the old. I think he just means the Old Testament. I think that's what he means.
Okay, so the
Could be wrong. Lino Molina might come back and correct me, but I think that's what he means. And if that is what he means, I think their Old Testament is pretty good.
Yeah, the NRSV, right? That's what you're asking about.
Yes. Yeah.
We generally don't like it. Some of the priests I've heard don't like it, and particularly because it has some, strange interpretations, like in Genesis or something.
Sure.
But I think it's a scholarly standard. It's one of the scholarly standard translations. You'll see it quoted a lot. So I would quote from it again, depending on the audience. If somebody's, wanting something, I don't know, a very broad audience, I might quote from it.
Yeah, there are better though.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I'll definitely.
I do say I do think it's Deuterocanon is good because I have the print of just the Deuterocanon from the NRSV. It's pretty good.
Sure it is. And Bronca, what a hater Bronca is. Bronca says, I prefer this channel. At least this channel is not full of heretics like the other one. Good morning to you, Bronca. How you doing, man? Very good morning to you, man. What a total hater, man. Oh, we read that one already, Gary.
Oh, we did. Okay.
Any good books on church history? Ari, thank you for the super chat, first off. Yeah. Oh, I mean, Liz, forgive me. Ari is going to totally hang me now that I confused them. Totally hang me. Liz, God bless you, Liz. Thank you for your support. My goodness, forgive me. Yeah, let me recommend a few for you. And you guys can toss in your recommendations. So, Liz, I think that you're looking for like a, kind of like a readable. I would normally recommend Eusebius Church History, but I think Liz is looking for something quite readable, like a popular level. So, I'm always going to recommend A History of Christendom from Carroll. I think that's a good series. I think it is good. So, I would recommend you own that one, Liz. But then there's another good one. In fact, let me just double check the name of it. A more popular edition that I think is worthy to read. It's good. Published by Catholic Answers. I'd recommend this one. It's good. It's readable. Timeless, A History of the Catholic Church. It's more modern. It's a friendly book to read. It is clear. It's not going to overwhelm you. And I think you'll really, really enjoy it. So I'd recommend those two. I'd recommend starting with Timeless. It's from Stephen Weidenkopf. I think it's a good book. It's good, accessible, and I think you'll get it'll get you off the ground running there. And then you're going to come back again and say, "Hey guys, now I need much more in-depth stuff." And when you're ready to do that, we'll be here by the grace of the Lord.
Yeah. All of Steve Weidenkopf's books are good. I like
yeah.
Steve.
Oh yeah. You've interviewed him before, haven't you?
Oh yeah,
Am I
yeah.
wrong?
He's a good guy. Good guy. Loves hockey. So
Really?
Gary
Okay.
2.0, you'll appreciate that.
There you go, man. Gary loves hockey. Ari, now I didn't get it wrong. Ari, Orthodox Philip, she wants to throw fisticuffs. She's there in the hospital, but she's ready to take you on. How many books do you have in your canon? And why should I accept yours instead of the Catholic one? Is there even a difference? And then she puts those eyeballs as she's getting ready to get a shot this big from the doctor. This big. We love you, Ari. Ari, God bless you. You're incredible. We love you. At least she hasn't called me the name she was calling me in the morning, man. Yeah, on the radio show. Go ahead, Orthodox Philip. This one's yours, brother. Go for it, my friend.
Yeah, kind of touched on this already a little bit.
Yeah.
Basically, if you want to list, it would be the same list as the Catholics with, maybe an appendix including 3rd, 4th Maccabees, probably even 2nd Esdras, just because it's quoted from the Fathers, not as canonical per se, but as something that we'd consider holy and venerable. Again, that's the language of the canons in our canon law. And then next to Ezra and Nehemiah, I would put 1st Esdras. That's how our Septuagint manuscript witnesses have it. And the Fathers quote from 1st Esdras a lot more than they quote from our Ezra. So I think it's important to read the same Bible as the Fathers. So that's kind of my target is I don't want to have a different Bible than what the Church Fathers have been using. And then if you're comparing it, of course, to a Protestant canon, there's going to be included in I say my Jeremiah, but it's really the patristic Jeremiah would include the Epistle of Jeremiah and Baruch. We wouldn't, at least I wouldn't divide those. I would consider those just Jeremiah. But I know Catholics divide Baruch into a separate book, which is fine. It's the same content.
Same content, though.
Yeah, same content. So yeah, not a big difference at all. Not a big difference. I think
the division the division. I'm sorry for interrupting. The division can make it seem like there's a bigger difference than there is.
Yeah, right. And I think that's true. I think that the differences are exaggerated by a lot of people. You might have some people who consider 3rd Maccabees as canonical, 4th Maccabees canonical, which we would tolerate. We wouldn't like excommunicate them or something. But I think going to our canon law, which seems to be the most authoritative source, it's not going to use that language for 3rd Maccabees. It's going to call it holy and venerable. So, yeah.
And I think to piggyback off of that, I've debated a scholar, Eastern Orthodox, Father Ramsey, that he doesn't agree with you, but I agree with you. I agree with you. I think that that you're right, and I think that your position, I think by all intents and purposes, you can read Jerusalem 1672, and I think it's echoing what you're saying, Philip.
Yeah, and I think I put a lot of weight on that synod actually, because
sure.
And people say, "Oh, it's not authoritative." Well, it doesn't really matter to me whether it's authoritative. I'm asking, is it true? Is it reflecting our tradition? Mm-hmm. And the fact that you had these patriarchs signing on it seems to be a good indication that it does reflect our tradition. So I would say that that's authoritative in so much as the truth is authoritative and our tradition is authoritative. Which is, I find it a little bit ironic because as Orthodox, we pride ourselves in our tradition, but then you hear some of these Orthodox talking and they're like, well, it's not stated in this council authoritatively. It's you sound more like you're looking for some kind of tyrannical definition or something. Like, don't you want to just lean on our timeless tradition that you see, being restated throughout the centuries? So that's kind of how I take it.
Yeah, I believe it's restated throughout the centuries. We're on the same page here. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I completely agree that the differences are exaggerated. Just take this thing. Okay, Jerome made a fresh translation, right? In the 4th century, 4th, 5th century. And then the Latin switched from Old Latin to his Vulgate, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe it was like the 7th, 8th century when Vulgate started to supersede the Old Latin. Did anyone in the East had a problem with that? I don't know if anyone, criticizing the West for, starting using Jerome's translation over the Old Latin, which is more in line with the Old Greek. like everyone was like, fine, okay. We still had ecumenical councils together, right? Like Second Nicaea, yet the Vulgate was already heavily in use in the West. No one said anything, right? So really these translation and these textual differences, it seems to me that for the early church wasn't that a big issue.
Right. Yeah. And I'm going to get in trouble for this one, but what about the Council of Florence, right? It's like there's a lot of critiques of the Council of Florence on our side, and I don't see any mentions of the Bible canon, even though it's listed there. I just think that's noteworthy, right? I'm not saying that from an Orthodox perspective, the Council of Florence is authoritative, but it's noteworthy that nobody flagged the canon as being incorrect, even though it's explicitly listed there. So I just find it interesting.
I bring that up all the time.
Yeah,
I bring that point up all the time.
And by the way, it seems to be the same canon at the Council of Jerusalem. Maybe you can interpret Maccabees differently, but that you can easily interpret them as being the same canon. So it's I find it very interesting.
I agree, and we've made that argument. Go ahead, David.
And then we also have the Peshitta, which is really, again, a little bit different, right? Then we have the Syro Hexapla, all these different versions, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Brother AB is coming out with the big guns. AB, God bless you, brother. How you doing today, brother? He says, the writing style of Greek Esdras was more eloquent, while Ezra Nehemiah is more literal in nature. This may have contributed to the affinity towards one or another.
Yep.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And I got to tell you guys, AB's sharp, man. AB, thank you for the super chat, brother. God bless you, brother. Yeah. Michael Barber has a great course in the book of Acts. Avoid History, says. We don't doubt it. I want to be very clear. Nobody here is saying that Michael Barber is a bad scholar. He's a phenomenal one. We just, we took a little issue with a certain thing said in the video. Bronca says, I have the KJV 1611 Catholic edition. I love it, but I can't read the small writing anymore. My eyes are bad. Can you recommend a Bible with bigger font?
I think they make large print in KJV.
KJV? They do? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Now, if that is the edition you want to stick to, Bronca, they've got to have a larger font edition. Now, if you're looking for any other good Bibles, I mean, there are plenty of other good Bibles out there that have larger font editions. Can you think of any, gentlemen? I know the Dewey Reams. We love the Dewey Reams. I'm pretty sure they may have a larger font.
I think there's RSV-CE large print.
There is. Okay.
Yeah, I think there is. Yeah.
Is there? Let me see. Let me see, guys. I am looking. Yeah, there is. There is RSV-CE large print edition. There you go. There you go, Bronca. There you go, man. Your prayers have been answered, man. But yeah, no, I can see his point of wanting a Bible edition with a larger print. I totally get that.
Yeah. I'm not sure what this is regards. Gregorus Rex.
I do know what he means, and I'm pretty sure that Orthodox Philip will agree. Orthodox Philip called that out right now. He said, I've heard some ex-Protestants becoming Orthodox taking that attitude with them. Yeah, sure. A few, not even a few months back, have disparaged and spoken poorly of the Deuterocanon. They go from Protestantism to Orthodoxy, and they think that they can take their Protestantism with them without abandoning that particular viewpoint in the Deuterocanon. So really, ultimately, we all agree here on this panel on the status of the Deuterocanon. The issue is, rightly so, and we, for people wondering, we have that point in our book that we wrote in the canon, Father Coppus and myself. We have that point that we shouldn't have these disagreements. We should be on the same page, and we make that argument from the councils. But there are certain individuals, and they're wrong when they make that push to say these deuterocanonical books are not they're not canonical. That is a problem. That's problematic. I think Orthodox Philip would agree with that as well.
Yeah, and I think this comes down to they're educated, but they need to keep going, be more educated on this. Because if you do it, if you start reading the fathers, you're going to see, this like two-part division of, you know, the 22 books, and then there's these other books. And if you stop right there, you might be tempted to walk away and say, oh yeah, look at these ones are not canonical, or they're lower, or something like this. But if you dig deeper, you start to notice things like, even Dr. Sweet, he points out, which I think is a very, very valuable quote in his book. He says, is that the original Christian view? Was the original Christian view taking the canon and dividing it into categories? And he's looking at the earliest church fathers and the manuscript witnesses and saying there is no distinction in how they're quoting from these books. There's no distinction for how they're writing these books. They're compiling them together. So he's interpreting it as it was actually a rabbinic Jewish influence in certain areas of the empire that the fathers were trying to balance. Or as our Saint Nicodemus of the Holy Mountain interprets it, I think he has a really cool interpretation of Saint Athanasius. He says that Saint Athanasius, when he was making these two groups, was actually trying to dignify the Deuterocanon, not lower it, but actually raise it for people who didn't think that they were canonical. He was trying to make a case for why they should include them in their Bibles. So I thought that was a very interesting.
I'd love to see that quote.
That's in the rudder, in the
That's in the rudder. Yeah, it's in the rudder. Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, I'll pull up the quote sometime. Yeah, but I thought that was very interesting.
I love that. I'd love to check that out.
So
by
again,
the way,
go
ahead,
but,
go for it.
No, I was just gonna say they make the distinction, but you go deeper, look at the big picture. You'll see that they're canonical scriptures for us.
Because it's a while back I was reading the rudder regarding the canon, and I cannot recall this one, so I think I need to refresh my memory.
Sure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. By the way, guys, all of my moderators are incredible, and you are all goated. That is not me. That's Ari being a hater. I'm talking under my account, man. I can tell you, man. All right.
Okay. Fight the Good Fight with Tony L. By the way, guys, show some love to his channel. He has some
Tony,
great
brother.
videos. Any thoughts on these citations from Catholic Intro to Old Testament? Recent research has shown that there's no exact canon, quote unquote, of the Septuagint, nor was there a set order of biblical books in the Septuagint.
Yeah. To me, just looking at it, it looks like it's kind of the mainstream view right now, currently. But actually, it was my video that I made on the topic of what books were in the original Septuagint really questions this with scrutiny, like what were the books that were initially translated for the Septuagint? It's a lot more nuanced than I think a lot of these modern scholars give it credit for. Yeah. So I would say this is a good representation of maybe the mainstream, Wikipedia type of information, and it's not, controversial today if you walk around saying these things. But I would say you can always go deeper and you can scrutinize some of these points. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter when these were translated, as long as by that time of Christ, the whole canon is there. And I think that that's something that all of the evidence is supporting, that by the time the church began, it received the Septuagint with its Deuterocanon. So I think that that's really the most important point to walk away with.
Yeah, we need to keep in mind what they mean by evidence, right? If you go with hard scholarship that we you have never recovered something, an archaeological evidence that is dated to the 1st century and it is labeled Septuagint, then that's not evidence. If you try to just infer from some later periods. But for us Catholics or even Eastern Orthodox or Christians, apostolic churches, when we look at the fathers, we do believe they have received the canon from the apostles. So we don't need to speculate, or should I think that Irenaeus was so, far away from the apostles and he just, just someone before him, included some other books into the canon. Is just, I don't think that holds any water. So, of course, by means of the very hard archaeological and I don't know what kind of evidence, sure, we don't have evidence, but at the same time, we don't have evidence for other proto-canonical books as well, by extension. So what we really do is we go with the early church, and that's pretty clear, I would say. I would agree with Orthodox Philip here.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird statement, canon of the Septuagint. Like a manuscript, does it have a canon? I think a canon is more of what goes into the manuscript, not what comes out of it. That's how I see it. So the whatever was in Alexandria on their, Bible shelf, who knows? Was it labeled, scriptures? Who knows? But whatever was there, would have been what the Jews in Alexandria believed were part of the scriptures. So I think maybe flipping it around and saying that the manuscripts are witness to what they believed were canonical. So it was really a canon of the Jews, canon of the Christians, and the Septuagint just simply reflects that. And it can be inaccurately reflecting that in certain manuscripts.
And by the way, as we were talking about the letter of Aristeas, and it's dating 2nd or 3rd century, just by the way, the consensus of the scholars is that that's a made-up legend, that it never happened, that it was just used to justify the Greek translation of the scriptures. So again, if you want to go with this strict scholarship, hard evidence, critical thinking, then it's just a legend and it never happened. So I would not be so quick to dismiss it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned this, because I forgot to mention this earlier. I think it's really important. Is a lot of people only ever reference the letter of Aristeas as the source of the Septuagint story, but it's not the only source. We actually have lots of witnesses to that story, and they don't all agree, which is very interesting because it means that they're not all pulling from the same source. And one really good example is Philo of Alexandria tells a slightly different account of the Septuagint, and he's living in Alexandria. He reports that there's a festival annually where they celebrate the Septuagint. So he's actually drawing from Alexandrian oral tradition, which is very interesting. So we know about the Septuagint not just from the letter of Aristeas, but we have multiple sources. And I think what the good scholars, the deep scholars do is they try to look at points that are in agreement and sort of find, these points we're sure about, these ones are probably legendary, instead of dismissing them all or accepting them all, you kind of try to discern. So yeah, I find that gets too oversimplified. In fact, in this video, he said the letter of Aristeas is the earliest account. That's also not true. Some scholars believe that Aristobulus is the oldest Septuagint account, who is quoted by Eusebius, and he tells us a very slightly different account. So yeah, it's worth looking into and sort of taking each account and considering it individually.
Yeah, check out the video made by Orthodox Philip. Yes, you got Aristobulus there.
Yeah.
Yes,
oh, you do have that there. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, very good point. So we have different independent sources pointing to the same translating mechanism. So yeah, it's difficult to dismiss it as a legend, or like everybody was, tricked or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, that's how they treat it. They treat it like the letter of Aristeas just happened to be in front of the fathers, and oh, what's this? I'm going to believe this, and just like they're really stupid or something.
Yeah, like they were buffoons.
Yeah, buffoons, and it's like that's not how it works. This is something that was well established, and I think about it like imagine 3,000 years from now, archaeologists discover like a high school textbook or something, and they say, oh, the United States is this legendary country, and there's this legend that started with this book, and about how the Constitution was written. But if you look at, the reality is that book came out of the history of that time, not the other way around. And I think that's with the letter of Aristeas. The letter of Aristeas came out of the history that was well known. Some of it is probably made up, not all of it. Some of it's probably true, but we have other sources that we can look at.
Yeah, second quote is Pentateuch was the first 250 BC, and then continues, other Jewish scriptures were translated progressively over the next 2 centuries under circumstances unknown to us. So I think we would agree it's circumstances unknown to us. And
yeah.
And sure. This is interesting. He says of the next 2 centuries, which would put it right at the turn of the era, right? So
yeah,
that's actually, it's interesting to say it reached, I guess you could say, its final form. I don't know if, if you could say that at the turn of the era, but that's actually quite early.
That is quite early.
Yeah. Yeah, it's around that time of Christ. So yeah. I think that this wouldn't negatively impact our view of the canon. But this is exactly the point that I'm scrutinizing in my video on this question. What was only the Torah translated by the Septuagint translators in that initial committee? It's actually not as clear as you might think in the original sources. So if you're interested in that particular question, I have a whole video on that topic. But I tend to think it was more than the Torah, but less than the entire Old Testament. Probably the prophets were in there, and that's just the church fathers are saying that. They're saying the law and the prophets were translated by the 70. So, but yeah, I think
that would make sense because would make sense because you have like, right, we have in Maccabees it's mentioned the law and the prophets. So, in the 2nd century, it's certainly the scriptures are more than just the Torah.
Right.
So why would they limit it just to the Torah? I have no idea.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense. But yeah, you see in the New Testament that Paul calls Isaiah the law, right? So it's like, okay, so obviously law doesn't always mean the Pentateuch. And so when you read these ancient Jewish sources, they say the law was translated. They never say the Pentateuch or the books of Moses. So you really have to interpret that law as being the Pentateuch alone, even though the text doesn't state that. But the fact that we have the New Testament that uses the law in a broader sense, I think gives some weight to the theory that maybe law included other books in addition to the books of Moses.
Yeah, so it was the 39 Protestant canon that was translated by the...
Oh yeah.
Well, actually, it is an interesting point. If they translated Jeremiah, which was a prophet, it would have included Baruch. So that would make Baruch all the way back in the 3rd century BC. So if that theory is correct, it does have some weight in the canon debate.
Yeah.
Final question. Jesus talks with Ari, and this is actually a good way to sum up and say goodbye. Panel question. Why should we care about the Septuagint? Why is it important? And she says, asking for a Protestant who maybe never heard of this. So, Orthodox Philip, since you're our guest, do you want to take a swing at that?
Yeah, gosh, there's a lot of things about the Septuagint that make it great. It's my favorite version of the Old Testament. It's our oldest witness to the Old Testament, so it's much older than the Masoretic text. So you really have a window into an ancient version of the Old Testament that goes farther back than any other witness that we have. So that makes it very interesting from a textual perspective. But from a devotional perspective, this is the mainstream Bible of the early church. And the Eastern Church, all the way to the present, we still hear it. I hear it at my church, and at a Greek Orthodox church, I hear it on Sundays and on feast days. So it's pretty cool that you have this continuity through the Septuagint with the historic church. I know for me, I value that a lot when I read the Bible. I'm reading the Bible of the Fathers when I'm reading the Septuagint. I'm not reading a later text or something different than what they would have read. So it has text critical value. It has devotional value. It's a very ancient historic Bible, and it's apostle approved, right? So we were talking the New Testament quotes from the Septuagint, around maybe 80% of the time, one scholar said. So it's definitely approved by the apostles. Is it perfectly accurate in every single way to the Hebrew text? Maybe not. It's not I don't really care too much about that. The fact is that by people who I look up to, my fathers in the church, the apostles, they used it. And if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me.
Good. Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, and just to add to that, and it was mentioned earlier, it's great. It, in my opinion, preserves Christological prophecy in a very clear fashion as well. It very often makes explicit what perhaps maybe some people believe to be implicit in Hebrew. It's great. It's fantastic. And yeah, to echo what Orthodox Philip said, hey, it's the Bible of the early church fathers. Good enough for me, man.
There we go. David, any final thoughts?
It was great. I enjoyed it very much. I like these kinds of conversations, and it's really it's also veiled a little bit with mystery and so on. So it's intriguing, and it's super cool. So thank you for that, gentlemen. I really enjoyed it.
I also want to give a shout out very briefly before we end to all the audience that send in super chats. You guys had us working today, answering your questions. You guys are great. I do want to thank you all whether you sent them here in Patristic Pillars, over there in the Apocrypha Apocalypse. We thank you all a ton. We're able to do the work we do because of your support. Guys and gals, thank you so much for your support.
All right. Good night, everybody. Take care.